just don't make things like they used to. Used to.
What is that?
Speaker. It's an old speaker. It's a very unique one because it's a smaller scale than what they're usually used to seeing. Got it for $10.
Hello friends, my name is Jasmine and I'm an illustrator. Welcome to week 2 of NaNoWriMo and also my bed. The reason why I'm starting this vlog on my bed at night because I haven't written until Thursday. So we're starting this week on a Thursday. I was editing a vlog and I was listening to this track by In Love with a Ghost. I really like their music for my vlogs. That inspired me to work on Spacewarriors right now. I do have the evening free and I really should be working on the third and last part of this sci-fi comics script. So that's what we're working on tonight. And where we're at in the story, Yuka and Euros are in a new planet. We have added 2 new characters in the story and they're about to sit down and sort of talk about their stories. And I'm always wary of these kinds of scenes where you're walking a thin line of exposition. So as the writer, you have to not only introduce who they are, but also kind of propel the story forward while they're introducing all this new information. I think that's partly why I've been avoiding continuing to write Spacewarriors, because these kinds of scenes I don't feel very confident in writing. I do enjoy action scenes more, so this kind of sit down, I just don't want it to feel so exposition-y. I'm assuming that even if it comes out like crap, I can always go back and revise it, so you just gotta write the words down and work with something, because that's better than nothing. So I'm gonna continue to chip at the scene and see where that goes. Happy Friday! I just went on my lunch break, so we have 30 minutes to write. I'm fixing my forest app so we can get started. I don't know if you can hear the dogs crying, but they're the neighbors upstairs. Their dogs are always crying when the neighbors are gone for some reason. Anyways, I got new headphones. The Beats headphones that I had before were totally broken, and honestly, Jonathan had found them on the street, so I think it was time to get new ones because I think we lost them at the airport last time we had them. So finally got new ones that are actually comfortable and they have like this cool LED lighting. I don't know, I've been really liking them. Now we can definitely get to work. Hello! It is 6:45. I had to work overtime, but we're back. Can I get some more writing? I did a lot of writing this morning and at lunchtime on my fantasy romance story, so I should probably go back to Spacewarriors and continue that scene that I'm like, meh, because it does tread that exposition line, so I'm just gonna do my best for now, and hopefully future Jasmine can rewrite that scene and not make it seem so dull. It is Friday, and Jonathan's gonna go out with his friends, which means I'm gonna be all on my lonesome to write tonight. I am absolutely okay with that. I took over his leftover beer, so I feel like it's gonna be a pretty good, productive writing night. Because we're working with Spacewarriors, I'm going to change the color to this like dark blue. I feel like that's kind of a sci-fi color. So, it's been, has it been an hour? Because I had my forest app on. Yep, it's been an hour. Okay, so it's been an hour. I have written 747 words. That's a lot. And yet I feel like I haven't really written that much. Mostly because I keep getting distracted because I'm writing a scene that I don't feel too confident in. We're done with the exposition-y stuff and we're now going to travel to another area in that planet. And yeah, the thing that astounds me with Spacewarriors is that I really haven't thought through a lot in terms of the details. The story itself, I got that solid in my head. I don't even actually need that much of an outline to follow along with what is the story that I'm trying to tell. But it's more like the world building details that I haven't nailed down. And that's because I haven't really confronted those prompts to begin with to even formulate what that would be. For example, so I just came up with a way for Space Warriors to travel short distances, and I wouldn't have figured that out before because it was never really necessary. But it's pretty cool that I just came up with it. I'm actually going to add it to part 2 because there is a scene in part 2 that I wasn't too sure about, and I think adding this method of travel is going to kind of help with that awkward scene. One of the issues that I think that I still need to work on in part 2 is the suspending of disbelief stuff. Like, how are all these things happening without being questioned, and what are the limits in this world, physics, those kinds of things. So I need to go back and just read through the thumbnails again and intuitively see how much of it just isn't believable, if that makes sense. Especially when it concerns action scenes, and that flow needs to make sense. It needs to convince the reader that, yeah, that I can see that happening. The character doing these things, that makes sense. Adding this new method of transportation, I think, is going to help sort of fill in some of those questionable series of events in part 2. So I think it still needs to be worked out, but the only way for me to really fix those things is to add a lot of distance and time with part 2. I wrote and thumbnailed that I think last year, so it's been about a year since I've seen the script of part 2. So I think the next time I go back to part 2, after I've written part 3, I think I'll be able to improve part 2 before I go into the production phase. So yeah, I already drew all the thumbnails, but at least the pages haven't been drawn. So even if it's in thumbnail form, there's definitely room to revise and redraw thumbnails, add more thumbnails. Like, it's still in the Play-Doh phase, and I don't want to move on from that yet because I know it probably needs a lot of revision. So that's why I've stopped drawing part 2, because I don't want to get to the point where I need to scrap entirely drawn pages because I didn't revise it. So I put a pause on that. If you're ever wondering why you don't see me drawing any more Space Warriors, it's because I want to finish writing it before going back into production. So if you're wondering where I'm at in part 3, I would say I'm in the 35%. Safe to say 35% mark of part 3. So not bad. I feel like I've written the tough parts, at least the parts that were giving me the most resistance, because they're just not fun. I don't like introductory stuff. I like to just jump into a story and have the reader just figure it out. But I do feel like 2 whole parts of the story, things do need to be answered, and by part 3 is gonna have to start getting answers about a lot of stuff. So I think I have anxiety about when to start releasing these answers. I don't know if these reveals are gonna be too soon or they're just not even gonna make sense. I think that's the anxiety in writing part 3. It's closing those loops, and I'm afraid that I'm not going to do it in a skillful way. I think that's what it is. I recently had beta readers for my short story, and that was really helpful. So maybe I need to apply that to Space Warriors after I finish writing it. I just don't know how I'm going to format it so that someone else can make sense of the script that's not me, because the way I'm writing it, it's not super descriptive, It's just enough description for me to know what to envision when I'm in the thumbnail phase. So that's where we're at. I'm kind of over writing Spacewarriors right now. I might jump back to my romance fantasy because that's where I want to be. I need to feed Huck and Kitty and take a break, and we'll get back to this. Time to eat. You hungry? Everybody gets to eat. I'm very sleepy. It's only 10:18. This is definitely like my bedtime. But it's a Friday night. I know I should probably try to stay up, but the words aren't really coming out as freely as they used to. So either I can force this out. I can't even talk. I'm slurring. How did I get this sleepy? It's insane. Jonathan makes a joke that I sometimes turn into a pumpkin at midnight, as in like I just shut down, like done. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling like I'm turning into a pumpkin now. Let's tally up our word count. Wow. Today's total for my romance fantasy novel, 1,365 words, plus what I wrote with Spacewarriors this evening, which was 747. 2,112 words. That is pretty awesome. That's twice my daily word goal. So it's time to update my pathetic NaNoWriMo profiles. So 2,112 words this session. Update. Like, why am I even doing this? I'm a nano rebel. This is not pertinent at all to what I'm doing, but it's fun to update it. I've been really enjoying being part of this challenge and following a ton of writing vlogs going through NaNoWriMo right now, so I just want to be part of something, you guys. I really should get on a girl night. I just don't feel like it because I am dreading continuing to write it, feeling so utterly not capable to write it. It is. Something in my brain is not clicking with it, and the anxiety of that is just completely deadening any enthusiasm in working on it. So I don't know when that's going to go away or how to really work through that. So for now, I'm just gonna focus on the projects that do spark joy, which, as you've seen for today, it's Spacewarriors and this random romance fantasy novel. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. It doesn't matter. I'm having a great time writing it. That's really what life should be about. It's not even 6:20. And I just woke up from a horrible nightmare. Do you want to know what the nightmare is? Because in retrospect, it's very silly. I am fucked up. My dream was I was gonna meet up Jonathan to dinner with his family, and for some reason, I was taking her. And while her and I were in the freeway, an accident occurs and we have to stop. Also, my lights aren't working, so I'm driving pretty much blind in the dark. Of course, since I have to stop in the freeway, I don't know how, but Kitty escapes out of the car. Also, I'm not even carrying her cage. The rest of the dream is just me trying to cling to Kitty while figuring out where my car is, because I ran out to grab Kitty, and then when I returned, my car wasn't there. And I still held Kitty, and she kept squirming and wanting to run away. And I was just mortified that if I let her go, I would never see her again. And there were so many times that she did run away and I had to go chase her. And then when I would grab Kitty, I couldn't find my car. Eventually, I found my car, and it was just the skeleton of it. I knew that somebody had hit my car had gone up in flames. Mind you, this is just like 15 minutes into the dream. How can a car go up in flames in 15 minutes and you just see the skeleton? Like, that's impossible. That would take hours. That's when I started to question everything, but even so, that was so stressful. And I did eventually lose Kitty, and I had to like accept the fact that I would never see her again. And that's it. That's the dream. Like, what was the point of that other than just mortifying me? I literally just woke up and I was like, wow, that was a dream. Thank God. And now I'm awake. Jonathan is out for a run, and I could go back to sleep, but why? It's almost 6:30. I might as well put some words in, right? Hello, it is 1 o'clock and we just had breakfast with our friends who we're also going to be going out with later in the day to Disneyland for Dapper Day. So there's this little pocket right now of free time, so I'm definitely going to use that to write. But I did want to mention that I'm having, I don't want to say doubts, but hesitations about publishing my short story in December. Not because the story isn't ready, although it probably isn't. There's probably a lot more revisions that I could do for it. I'll be going over that later. I have a few books I wanted to show you that I want to apply during my next big revision of the short story, which is going to include the beta reader feedback, but that's a separate issue. So the reason I'm having some hesitations about publishing the short story is it is a to be continued story. And one of the beta readers commented that they didn't like that it was to be continued and to feel like there was nothing to look forward to afterwards. Which is true. I really don't know when I'm going to publish the rest of the story. I don't know how I'm going to publish it. Is it going to be more installments of short stories to encompass a whole story? Or is it going to be the short story and then pretty much a novel afterwards? I do think that that's kind of important to consider when I publish this, because pretty much ignoring everything I have learned as a freelancer about marketing, when you launch something, you have to have a campaign. You have to know what you're going to advertise before the actual launch date. You need to send several newsletters. You need to post that you're working on this project months in advance. Like, this is a whole operation, and I've pretty much ignored all of that. I've mentioned my short story a few times on Instagram and here on my YouTube channel, and that's pretty much it. I do feel like I should probably do this with much more planning, not just for profit, but also for the sake of the reader. It would suck to read a short story and see the to be continued and then have to wait maybe a whole year to be able to read either a portion of the rest of the story or the entire thing. So I've been thinking about this, even though I've been excited about doing a December publishing day. I don't know if that's the smartest thing to do. So that's where I'm at. If you have any thoughts on that, please let me know. Also, a friend of mine asked me if I would be interested in traditional publishing route. And if that's the case, then I really can't be publishing any portion of the story online. It's almost like I have to make this decision now before I go any further, and it's very strange. And let me just say too, traditional publishing and fiction, like, that's just pretty much impossible. But if I even want to consider that as an option, at least just to find an agent, I don't know. See what I do? Like, I start thinking about it and then I just shut myself out on the possibility because I just don't think I'm capable of it. I am constantly shooting myself down and I don't know why. So because I have this hesitation, I do think that I should probably halt on having a December deadline until I figure out what I want to do. The way that I could make this work is probably to self-publish this story in installments, but without big gaps. One of the issues with Spacewarriors is that I published it online before it was done, and in doing that, I have kind of broken a reader's continuity. If you want to be a fan of something and for it to abruptly stop, that's pretty tough to be a fan of it if it's not consistent. I do feel like I've learned lessons, it's time for me to apply them. To apply them requires much more discipline and patience. So I think for this story, you know what it is? I have the answer, I just don't want to accept it. I don't want to accept it because that means that I can't put the story out there this year. It means I'm gonna have to keep it to myself and truly finish writing it, finish revising it, do all of that preparation stuff, and then be able to publish it, which is what normal people do. So I think I know the answer, and I just don't want to admit it. I don't. I want to share the story already. I think that's just very silly of me. With the pace that I'm going, I could finish the story by February and then get all of that revised and beta read, more editing, and I'd have time to do more artwork. What's cool too is that if I self-publish the story in these installments, the stories might be too long for this, but it's a newspaper. And they're pretty cheap to print. So I was thinking if there were ever to be a printed version, printed to this stuff, this cheap paper. And this is what it would look like inside. It's a sample. These are the text options. So if you actually have any comic ideas that are really short and casual, I would recommend to try out Newspaper Club. You can order a sample pack and they'll send you a bunch of these with different sizes and colors so that you can see what you could possibly print. And I've never printed anything on it, but I have them just because I know I want to one day. I just haven't done any completed work that could go with that, but that's an option. I don't know if it's appropriate format for fiction. I'm gonna think about it. First, I need to write the whole thing. So before I think about anything else, it needs to be written. But just so you know, check them out because I think it's a very creative way to print out your work. I am blabbering on. Let's get to writing. Wah, wah, wah.
This is an old radio.